Oh, hello, bitches. It's me, Nails here. I'm have gone through much, and yet I still live. I ain't gonna question it. I'm just gonna roll with it. So, if you like dark, pulpy fantasy action, this is the book for you. Malice by John Gwynne is an epic, grimdark fantasy from 2012. Now, it is not a quick read. It's a slow burn, which is ironic because when the frequent action scenes hit, the pages fly by because you're so immersed. The action is very visceral and well imagined and captivating. And there's a lot more of it than the usual fantasy novel. And that's a good thing for me, but perhaps not for most women. You see, it did feel a bit guy centric, not to the point of being a incel dark fantasy, but I mean, and it's believable too. So, um, if you are so chilled by the winds of winter and you keep dreaming for a spring that will never come, to fill the void in your heart when your heart cannot sing a song of ice and fire, this is the proper thing to read in the elevator of life's waiting room. So now it is both the greatest of compliments and the worst of criticisms that I do declare. This book, probably the whole book series, wouldn't exist without George Martin. But I have a underlying bias because it just so happens I've rated bookstores for things that are as immersive, for being as grounded in, as I've said in previous book review videos of those my favorite fantasy series of all time. And I mean, it's true what they say, be careful what you wish for. This was indeed too similar to something I love, but I'm so divided because I want to criticize it for that, but it really does fill the void. However, it will satisfy fantasy fans immensely. I don't think it'll win a lot of new fantasy fans. It doesn't feel dated, but every trope feels worn. Frustratingly, I counted. There's at least 5 times where the heroes are unexpectedly saved by allies in the nick of time and improbable circumstances, and these tropes feel a bit tired. Um, but by the end of it, I finally found myself caring about the characters, so it is worth it to soldier through what can otherwise sometimes feel like tedious amounts of detail. He probably could have edited out 100 pages or so of stuff that really didn't advance the story. For example, mild spoiler alert, okay? There's a certain character, I won't say who, where there's a lot of build-up given to them as if what they're doing hands-on is relevant to the greater plot, and then towards the end of the story, they're unexpectedly killed in an instant. And I admire the book for that bitingly unfair, bitter realism that's typical of grimdark. But the thing is, not only have we seen things like that happen a lot, the book had you thinking it was going somewhere. So it is not a page turner, except when there's high adrenaline battles. However, and the characters don't have strong underlying sense of destiny about them or any complex enlightened set of moral creeds to guide them just on some sacred quest. And that was one of the tropes I would have actually liked to see in this book. Instead, they're really quite plain. It wasn't till page 600 that I really found myself caring about them enough to be truly invested. So to be honest, I wanted to like this book enough to want to finish it instantly, and it took me 3 months to finish. But it was memorable enough that I remember just about everything that happened. But except for as far as the main characters are concerned, there is a bit too many faceless characters, and they all kind of feel similar to each other in the various courts of the various kings. So, I mean, nothing we haven't seen before, but the construction and the execution is really, really good. And it's just more of what you need if you love um, suspense, pulp, and realistic fantasy that tells the truth about combat, war, death, coming of age. It's one of the most unique elements of the world. Every man in every kingdom feels essential in war, and there's a personality. There's a groundedness to it. The whole world has a long history that operates on warfare and tension and power plays and power struggles that brew up and then periodically explode. And that build up, because it has such a long, slow burn build up to when there finally is war erupting through the kingdom. Although we've seen very similar things, especially in Song of Ice and Fire, when it happens, it's so much more shocking, nonetheless, even though you can predict it a million miles away. It's just very satisfying. It's just a very satisfying, adventurous, tragic, dark fantasy. There's a coming of age element that has some charm to it. Just the establishing the character is so trope laden with, like, almost reminds you of a hero's journey. Certain plot twists are predictable, but overall it just does everything right to have a great world that's unique for being dark, that's challenging and gritty. Gritty is the right word I would use for this book. Malice, it does live up to its title and this badass cover. It is a book just that relies upon the pulp and the adrenaline of medieval fantasy combat. Sometimes I wish it would have had a stronger set of, like, oomph, like motivation for the characters as it concerned their beliefs and their more intellectual potential quandaries and developments and being conflicted and stuff. So the drama wasn't particularly heavy, but there is some, almost admirable quality to the simplicity of how plain they all are. And so, the world is very real and feels well realized. And some of the magic of the skill of the author, of John Gwynne, I hope I'm saying his name right, is incorporating monsters and some magic into the combat. And it's altogether very cinematic and high intensity, high adrenaline, lots of tension and suspense. There's some good dialogue between courtly affairs, between royalty and some pretty strong dialogue, but the prose isn't amazing. It's conventional, it gets the job done, and there is a very honest quality to its simplicity. I think is very accessible if you have the patience for the details. If you don't, the world will put you to sleep. So this is not the most engaging, page-turning fantasy I've read, but for what it did get right, I was extremely satisfied and entertained, and so I have to give Malice a 9 out of 10. I definitely will be reading the series. I don't know what the series. It's called the Faithful and the Fallen series, and I don't know how many books. I think there's 3 or 4, and then John Gwynne has written many other books. But he's a new instant favorite author, fantasy author of mine. Exactly what I was looking for, exactly what I needed at the time. I got my money's worth. I spent $20 on this at Barnes & Noble. It's worth it. This could be this book alone could be a fantastic 10-hour miniseries that's extremely, I could even see it making a better miniseries than book. But I don't know what else to say. Not a whole lot sticks out of my memory as being terribly unique, except that if you're a dude who's down on your luck and you're depressed for whatever reason, and you're questioning what it means to be a man, this is a good book to read for motivation, because it does have that grit, that kick in the butt you might need. And I think it's the stars aligned in some sort of, what's the word, synchronicity type way, where this is just the time where I needed a book like this to make me want to go out and conquer something. There's also a sort of Shakespearean tragic tone and themes that play out that is timelessly entertaining for us to see, and It does have an element of grandiosity and class that we don't see often in modern fantasy. So I guess it's not really fair to call it pulp. I'd say it does satisfy in terms of being epic. Um, I just meant it's pulpy for the main meat and potatoes of what I like personally the most about what kept me invested, which is the adrenaline, the action, which I think the author does. That's what I'll remember this book most for. Um, Besides the likability of and innocence of the main character Corbin, I'll remember this book for even more so for the action, the battles, and I find inspiration and strength from these things that I think it has something to do with ancestral memory. Honestly, I think that the culmination of our ancestors somehow it carries to things in a very like this works of art like this in a very enchanting way. It's just it's timeless, is what it is. It's timeless examples of heroism, selfless service, loyalty to one's king and country and cause is there. Examples of strength and bravery. That these are all timeless fantasy. It's great to see come back. So I wouldn't call it a total, not as depressing or exploring as dark of things as I've seen in other grimdark fantasy novels. I'm not entirely sure if it qualifies as grimdark, or maybe just a heroic fantasy that is in a world where there's a lot of malice, a lot of anger, and a long history of doing business with action and not always talking, to put it simply. So anyway, I really, really, really enjoyed this. Highly recommend Malice by John Gwynne. Yeah, get lost.